Gabe, welcome back to the United States. You have been all across the world over the past few weeks, and I'm glad to have you back in the podcast studio.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a busy September, my friend. I covered a lot of time zones in the last few weeks, but very happy to be home.
And none of them mountain, by the way.
No, none of them really even in the United States. But it was awesome. They were good trips, good conversations with customers and prospects alike. And it was an awesome opportunity, man, for sure. But very, very happy to be home. I feel like I'm getting sort of back to normal, whatever that is. But yes, it's been a challenge coming back for sure.
Well, let me fill you in on what you missed. Number one,
I need to know what the heck happened in the US while I was gone.
There's kind of three things. So number one, Meta announced new AI sunglasses and also ones with a little bit of a built-in display. The presentation was an absolute disaster, which was I enjoyed watching it, to be honest. Nothing really went as expected, but very optimistic for that product line. Number two, Apple came out with some new iPhones and some other devices, and of course, their latest software, which reminds me of a TikTok I saw this week, Gabe. And it was someone with like an iPhone. I don't know what it was. It was one of the iPhones with a button and a small screen. And it was like the original Siri. So whatever phone that was, the original Siri, iPhone 4S. And they were asking Siri questions like that Siri was built to do kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because like I pulled out my iPhone and I asked the same questions and the responses either just didn't work or, it was just like an updated version. It was kind of 50-50. And it just made me laugh of how far downhill Siri has gone. But it also, now my Siri's triggered. But it also made me wonder, and the question I kind of had here today before we get into our main topic was, is Siri out of date, or is the way we're asking questions evolved to a point where that's not the right product kind of thing? And, you could always improve the product, but I've been using Gemini on my iPhone as the kind of default AI button for the past few weeks here. And I could not be more impressed.
It's a really interesting thought of, have we evolved in asking questions of computers in a way that Siri doesn't really recognize anymore.
And this is, I don't know like what you do with it. And I'm saying it because I don't want to trigger Siri in, but
virtually nothing because it sucks so bad.
Yeah, these two things I've done. 2.5, I'll say. Number one, setting timers, right? That's phenomenal, right? Number two, when I'm driving, sending text messages. And number three, when I'm driving, playing playlists or looking for specific music, which by the way, it does such a bad job at as well. It's quite comical. Like it'll pause and like do its little loading sound, but it only does that if I don't explicitly say on Apple Music. But it goes back to, you should be contextually aware of where I go to listen to music and what app I use. But I don't want this episode to be dishing out on Siri. The thing I want to focus on there is I've been using Gemini. And not only have I been using Gemini, but I've been using the new Google Gemini Chrome browser integration, which, Gabe, I'm going to call this, I don't know if it's going to be the biggest Chrome update we've ever seen, but it's a critical inflection point and an evolution of how we use browsers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And I've been playing with it a bit this week as well. And as I've been interacting with it, it's a very different experience than we're used to, I think, using Chrome and using Google Search and those sorts of things. And we've touched on Google Search AI mode and things like that. But this to me is a really next big step or evolution in that process where it's bringing it much more contextually aware of what it is that you're doing at that moment. And also, Zach, I know one of your favorite things, multimodal, where it can see what you're looking at on your screen. It can provide that additional context. It's wild, man. And I know we're going to get into some of the details today around how we expect people and businesses to be impacted by this, but it's definitely a huge step forward for sure.
Yeah, and I think go back to the funnel here. And what Gemini and Chrome has done is, Gabe, we're very good at browsing web pages, scrolling through. I don't think that's going to be the case here because as we've seen with Gemini and Chrome, we're leaving a lot of the decision making up to the AI agent. It's going to dictate that browsing experience for you. We're no longer just viewing web pages. We've brought, to your point, that multimodal functionality into web browsing. So, Gabe, what is Gemini and Chrome? What can we do with Gemini and Chrome? We've been playing with this a little bit. I shared some examples here, but at a high level, you can generate page summaries. You can break down key ideas and main points. You can compare information across multiple tabs, which I just have to double click into that. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said double click into that, but we're gonna dive deeper into that
There you go.
because think about the products and services you have on your website. Well, now anyone who's using Chrome can instantly compare you to the next broadband provider or your next competitor in town. Gabe, this is one of the examples I shared with you,
Hmm.
and I thought it was fascinating because we always talk about this speeds and feeds versus experience. Gabe, which one worked better with the AI model?
Without a doubt, the one that is leaning more into how people actually use the internet versus just talking about the technology. I want to go back to something you mentioned. One of the first features you mentioned there, Zach, which is the generating page summaries. Just to really double click, as Zach said, or dive deep into that specific topic. Sorry, had to do it.
We lost at least a dozen listeners when I said that. That's like one of the worst corporate phrases you can use.
There are some really terrible ones. Let's circle back on that and synergy, and there's a bunch of other ones that are super annoying. But yeah, double clicking isn't ideal. So what what you can do with the Gemini integration in Chrome is if you're on a web page, you can literally just type into Gemini, summarize this page, and it will go through, and because it can quote unquote see the page, it's going to go through and summarize all of this information for you. I did this just earlier today on a broadband service provider website that I would consider very, very good. Like it really does a good job of talking about who's the target audiences for these solutions, the different solutions that they're selling, not just talking about speed and price, but really talking about the value that the person who is interested in buying the service is going to get out of purchasing it. And then I went to a traditional website, one that just talks a lot about the technology and about the speed and about the price. And I would say, Zach, one of the ones that the type of website that we see very commonly still in this industry. And the summaries that were generated between those two pages were dramatically different. And even down to there was a section on the good website, quote unquote, that had why we're different and really leaned into the benefits of why that company was different than their competitor. And I was pretty blown away. There was nothing like that on the more generic page, nothing even close. So, if I was a consumer looking at company A versus company B, I'd be going with company A every single day and twice on Sunday because of how much better the explanation was from an AI perspective with that Gemini integration.
Hold on, Gabe. Let me get this right. You're telling me that AI recognized the experience and the value over talking points like fiber being the width of a single hair and made of
I,
glass?
I know you're going to find that shocking, Zach, but yes, it actually did do that. Yes.
I I love that. And Gabe, I think as we kind of shift here and talk about what this means for the marketers listening, I think the big consequence here, and we kind of alluded to this, is the contraction of the attention economy. That's something I'm very familiar with. But the user, the web browser, us as individuals, the consumer, we don't have to scroll through sections and sections of content. We don't even have to read the content in full. We have the ability to go in there and quickly see that summary. And this is very different from, some of our web design best practices that we've used in the past, where we've talked about how can I capture my user's attention? Because with Gemini and Chrome, you don't need to with
Well,
different display ads and
yeah.
then the contextual links, the calls to actions. There's value into the AI recognizing those CTAs, but if someone's going in and simply doing an AI summary, capturing their attention is not as visual. I think is what I should say there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it is going to be interesting to see what happens over time. We have talked a lot about these best practices in the past, Zach, of making sure that high quality content is really towards the top of the page. Make sure that you have really clear calls to action. The stuff at the bottom of the page is likely not going to be seen by the reader or by the consumer. In this case, the consumer is AI. So all of that information actually will be read when somebody says summarize this page. So from that perspective, it may push back against some of those best practices that we've talked about in the past if people are really leveraging AI to summarize the pages that they're looking at. I still think that's going to be a relatively small percentage of people immediately. It's going to be the weirdos like you and me, but it is going to become much more broadly adopted over time.
And let's triple click into the call to action there, because this is something I kind of glossed over and said, it's not as important. But the call to action I'm going to separate out, because the call to action is going to tell AI it is a call to action. Gabe, we've talked a lot about call to outcomes in the past. Same thing. The call to outcome is now going to explain the value or the what's in it for me to the AI, which will then relay that back to you. So calls to action are, I'm going to say, even more important than ever, because the simple learn more is not going to give you as rich of a result as, say, a call to outcome when it's read and processed by that AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. And that's actually something I noticed too when I was looking at the, again, quote unquote, good website, was they were doing a better job of doing calls to outcome versus traditional calls to action. And those calls to outcome were actually called out in the summary specifically. So you're spot on there, Zach. If people are leaning more into what the benefit is that the customer is going to get out of purchasing that particular product or solution, then it is going to be summarized much more effectively in the AI summary.
And it doesn't do this today, but one of the things I did try with Gemini and Chrome was, I get paid for every time I say Gemini and Chrome. So one of the things I tried was, I told it to buy me service. I'm signed in with my Google account. You know who I am. Just buy
I
me
tried this too.
service. And it's not there yet. But Gabe, I think if we set a calendar reminder for even 12 months from now, I think we will be there, of the AI, not only helping me, the consumer, make a decision, but the AI model making that purchase decision for me. We've seen this with agent mode in Chat GPT. Um, more of a, I mean, it's not a beta; it's in production, but it's for paid users. But I think this is something that's going to be mass market here in the very near future.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, and I tried the same thing. I was like, what's going to happen if I try and do this? And while it didn't go through and make a purchase for me, what it did do is it said, "Would you like me to bring you to the purchase pages for all of these companies?" So it recognized that I was wanting to make a buying decision, and then brought me specifically to the page where I needed to make that purchase decision. So again, really important that you have those clear calls to outcome, those pages set up where people can go and actually make those purchases. Because if somebody's inputting that in the process, you want to be able to have that really direct line to have them make that purchase.
And I think the last thing here we'll touch on too is the generic service tier single page may not be as effective if you can't break down the value or the experience for every service tier you have. Or we talk about the invite matching the party. If you're going to run different web ads or advertisements, having those come back to a single place on your website again is going to provide that AI model with more rich content, which is exactly what we want to do. We want to have that high value trusted content. Google loves that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And just to really be very direct about this, if your service tier descriptions are super generic, where it's 4K video in this one and HD video in the other one, and ultra high definition video in the other, if they're falling into that kind of high level categorization, which, Zach, I know you and I have talked about ad nauseum, it's not going to be a good situation for AI
Can I
summarizing that for
can I
you.
just mention, Gabe? Everyone does that. So when you start comparing, you versus, provider ABC, provider XYZ in my area, if they're all doing the same thing, it's just chaos. How are you better as a broadband provider? And lean into that. Don't just say the whole, to your point, Gabe, 4K, 1080p, 5 to 10 devices. Oh my goodness, that's not going to work. And the example I mentioned at the top of the podcast was just that was, hey, compare this broadband experience provider to this non-experience provider, this just broadband
The
service
speed and
provider.
price, yeah, speed and price
And
provider.
I said, "Hey, I do a little bit of gaming, blah blah blah," and it specifically called out the features of the gaming plan and why. So I guess the why there, why that would be good for me as a consumer, and it told me to stick with the BXP, which is exactly what the outcome I wanted, and of course the customer wanted as well. So I think last point on that is if you have Chrome, test this out on your own website. If you have competitors, test it out against them too. Open up those multiple tabs, share that with them, and see whose product and service Gemini or AI in general prefers.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, and I did want to make sure we circle back to that. You should absolutely be going out and doing this on your own website and on your competitors' websites to see what the results are and how those compare. And this is a very easy test. We're talking about, Zach, what, 5-10 minutes worth of work maybe, and that includes actually reading through everything to get an understanding of what this looks like. The other thing I don't want to lose sight of this. We were talking about the specific uses. You mentioned gaming. When I was doing the search, I specifically called out that I work from home. Well, I was looking at a website today that had 5 different service tiers, and the middle service tier was the only one that listed out working from home as a feature, quote unquote, of the service. The top 2 service tiers, which I think were like a 1 gig and a multi-gig service tier, did not. Well, if I were to use AI to summarize that, if I were to use Chrome or Gemini and Chrome to do that, it would push me to the middle service tier because that's the one that I said I work from home, and it would have seen that and said, okay, well, here's the option that you should go you should go off and purchase. So I've downsold myself into a tier that may not necessarily be the best for me just because somebody thought it would be a good idea to put a work from home line in that one service tier and not in the others, which is a real.
Can I make one last comment on this too?
Please.
And it's something to think about. We often see most popular, best value, those different AI sees that too, right?
Great point.
So I think Gabe, you said it best. Test it on your website, test it on your competitor's website, and of course, I will say test it on non-industry websites. Get out of the broadband space, test it on Apple. I haven't done that yet, and see what results you get there as well. And then just one last point on this, but Gabe, a couple years ago, and if you can believe I just said that, a couple years ago, yes, 2 years ago, we did a podcast episode on what does Google know about me or what does the internet know about me? And we walked through more focused on ad preferences. What data does the internet know about me that's being used to personalize my ads? I'd love to see that influence more of these AI decisions, and it either does or we'll see more of that here in the future as well. But having AI, again, go back to that agentic hands off, recommend the product and service without me having to query a specific page would be a fantastic next step or evolution of this.
Well, and to your point about what data they know about you, I had this, I don't know why I didn't think about it before. I feel like kind of a moron for not having this epiphany, but I I was using Gemini and Chrome to do some shopping for a new dress shirts. And I actually kind of knew what brand I wanted to buy. It's the brand that you and I were talking about earlier, Zach. But I just
The
wanted to
only
kind of test
brand,
it. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much
they're
the only
not a
brand out there.
sponsor yet, so we don't have to mention them by
No,
name.
they're not. But they are high quality shirts. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try this just to see what other brands come up. And I was just kind of curious. So I think we've all kind of moved to the mode where we ask more detailed questions of AI than we ever did of traditional search. So when I did the search for this particular, for looking for dress shirts, what I said was, I want a non-iron shirt. I travel, so I want to make sure that that I don't have to iron it. I want it to, be a quality. I'm the type of person who would rather buy a high quality item than buy 5 cheap items and have to replace them quickly. And so I put all this into the prompt, and then it gave me a bunch of information about different products that I could buy. So about an hour later, I went, oh crap, now Google knows all of that information about me. All of that information that I just input into that prompt, they're now going to use to personalize ads to me in the send personalized ads to me. Sorry, I can't talk today. To me in the future. Now I'm probably going to be getting ads for higher, more expensive things because I've specifically said I don't mind spending a little bit more money if it means that I don't have to replace something every 2 months. And I was just like, oh man, I couldn't believe I hadn't thought about that before, but it's such an interesting way for them to start to cull and go through that data to then personalize the experience in the
And
future
that's
for the user.
exactly what I wanted you to end on there. That data is going to personalize the experience for you. And that's fantastic. That's something we recommend on I think every podcast episode is use the data to personalize the experience. Um, Gabe, again, you and I um, sounds like we might have the same dress shirt. So I'm glad you didn't say the brand because I think on the last episode I called out everyone wearing the same polo. So we're gonna keep that brand a secret. So you won't see anyone else wearing the same shirts. Maybe just Gabe and I. But using that data to personalize, there's nothing I love more. You and I are two very different people. Well, maybe not very different, but we're two different people. We have different buying habits. The ads I see are probably not the ads you want to see. And it goes back to just the comment there on the Google ads is would you rather have a personalized experience or would you rather have a generic experience that doesn't understand you as a consumer, right? Gabe, why would I be targeted with these family ads and why would you be targeted with these gamer ads kind of thing?
Mhm.
That's I mean, it goes right back to that. Use the data to optimize that customer experience.
Yep, absolutely. And again, this just gets easier with being able to leverage this data from an AI perspective.
I you said it just gets easier, and I was waiting for you to finish that sentence because this to me is like the step one of marketing, right? It's nothing new. It's nothing that you maybe should look into doing. It's something you should have been doing years ago. So, um, Gabe, I'm gonna get off that because I do want to talk about Gemini and Siri still a little bit more, but um, just wrapping this up here. So what? Um, to summarize everything, to be successful review your content and make sure it's easily digestible for AI interpretation. Go out and use those AI tools if you can. Gabe, we talked about that in great detail, but look at your website. Is it vague? Is it showing this commoditized product? Are you standing out from your competition? Are you talking about that fiber being the width of a single human hair that's made out of glass? Because that kind of content is not going to work in a competitive market.
hmm Well, and to that point, think about the 10 questions or, the handful of questions that somebody would be asking of Gemini and Chrome if they're going and actually looking at your website and do that research on your own. I think another thing I always recommend to folks, Zach, is pick family members or friends or whoever that are not in the industry and have them go do that research and see what they come up with because that's the average consumer, right? Look for that kind of average consumer and think about, how they're interacting with these new tools because that's the way, again, the average consumer is going to be leveraging these to find you and find out about the products and solutions that you're looking for. So again, think about the questions yourself, do the research yourself, but also again, pick 5 friends, 5 family members, whatever, and go off and see what they're doing and see the results as they're going off and doing this
And
research also.
that's a great example too, because ultimately what you want to do here is create your content that's in a natural language. It's conversational. Maybe it's in a helpful tone as well, but it's easily understandable. Gabe, I always recommend to my customers, take this home, share it with your spouse, or you share it with your friends. If you have a beta test, share it with people who are maybe not as techy or outside the industry as well. And that's often where you might get the best feedback.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, it's where you're going to get that really honest feedback and frankly things that you didn't think about because oftentimes we're in this space, we're so focused on it, we have our blinders on and we're not necessarily thinking about what the average person who's looking at this is going to understand. So, it's a great way to get outside of that space.
So hang on, Gabe. Are you telling me for the second time now that the average person is not concerned with bits and bytes?
Well, this is the thing, right? When I went to that other quote unquote website, the one that I happen to be looking at, but again, it's representative of many of the websites we look at. the summary talked about the technology, but if I don't understand the technology, then that's not something that resonates with me at all. It talked about, this is a fiber provider. This is how many fiber services they have. This is how many homes they pass with fiber. Again, if that's not a term that makes sense to me as a consumer, then all of the summary stuff is pointless because it's completely missing the mark.
Well, Gabe, I'm really curious about how many times the light pulses in my fiber connection as I watch a YouTube video. So
Uh,
I don't know, man. No,
it
but
it goes
I
back
think
to our what was it, grade 5 titanium or something like that with
exactly.
the Apple
Which
phones a few weeks ago.
by the way, the new iPhones, minus the iPhone Air, I believe it's called, is not made from titanium. So I'm really curious to where that titanium headline went, but I digress. The last thing, and I've alluded to this multiple times, so I don't want to dive too deep into this game. CTAs, CTOs, um, AI is going to transition in this conversion phase without additional prompting. So just making sure you have a very clear call to action, a very clear call to outcome, ideally, to help the AI agent with your website.
Yeah, not to beat this to death, but this is a situation where Zach and I have already seen in kind of our early testing of this that if you don't have clear calls to action or outcome, the AI is going to get confused and not know what to do. And conversely, if you do have those really clear calls to outcome, it becomes very obvious of how people are going to be pulled through that customer journey and ultimately to purchase.
You know what we should test now, Gabe? I'm thinking is we should find one of these legacy broadband service provider websites and see if we can get AI to hallucinate a little bit, make stuff up. I'd be interested to see if we could trick it a little bit with our prompting, because ideally, if you have that information on your website, AI could just pull it directly. I did see one case where um, the mention of a common industry term kind of made the AI go out to other websites and pull in information about that, which was great. It worked.
Interesting.
The information was still accurate. I'll have to share more about that one with you, Dave, internally here. But it was just showing how this AI agent, this AI model, is going out and collecting information about your products and services. Gabe, you know me. I'm a big fan of high quality websites, design, content, everything. So when it comes to AI optimization, I'm very interested to see what happens over the next 12 months. Gemini has been out on Chrome for about a week now. It's been a great week, but I'm very curious to see where this goes next. And on the last note, I mentioned this early on in the podcast. I switched my action button on my iPhone to from ChatGPT to Gemini, and I found Gemini is very good at not only accessing the web or the internet, but providing real time information to questions, something that Siri cannot do. Of course, I wonder if I could set a timer with Gemini. I'm kind of wondering now how far I could go with this, but just going back to there's so many different AI models out there. Each of them is great at something specifically. But what I've seen with Gemini here the past week, from my iPhone to being built into Chrome, is totally changing how I interact with websites and find information on the internet.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great summary, Zach.
I mean, Gabe, I think that's everything you missed here. We've got to talk about the titanium iPhones at some point here in the near future, but I'm going to say it now on the podcast because, again, 12 months from now, we're going to come back and talk about the latest AI and websites and everything. But I think we're also going to come back and talk about the foldable iPhone that may or may not have been based on the iPhone Air. So that's my last prediction here for the next 12 months, Gabe. But we do have some exciting episodes coming up here. Of course, we'll be live at Connections here in a few weeks. So we have some additional conversations, perhaps around AI, these broadband experience providers, what they're doing as well. So I think it's going to be a great month for the podcast.
Man, there's going to be a fire hose of content coming at people over the next few weeks with connections coming. Zach, you and I have been doing a bunch of prep, getting people lined up for the podcast. It's going to be awesome. We are very excited for everything that's coming with our large connections event and all the conversations that we're going to be able to have around it. It's going to be a blast.
I love it. Gabe, closing on this, what's your AI prediction? I kind of made mine for the next 12 months, but what's your AI prediction?
Well, I'll do a prediction off of your prediction. So you mentioned that you thought in 12 months that purchasing capabilities were going to be able to be in Gemini. I think it's much less than that. I'm going to say 6
Well,
months.
I mean, to be honest, we just saw it with Shopify and ChatGPT yesterday, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think that's going to accelerate very quickly, because I also feel like that's the way that these companies are going to start to monetize the AI investments that they've been making, by taking a small percentage of those things. That's what you saw. That's why ChatGPT and Shopify are doing this, so that they can, even if it's small, very, 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 very small percentage of transactions that are going through the solution, these things are going to add up very quickly and start to become very big dollars. So I think it's going to happen a lot faster. I wouldn't be surprised if in 6 months we're able to, that prompt that we tried today or this week that didn't work, I wouldn't be surprised if it does work and it has all that context and information. I mean, Google already has my credit card in there, right? Like, it seems like it would be a pretty, knows where I live. It seems like it would be a pretty easy leap to start to make purchases for me if I say it's okay to do so.
Man, well, Gabe, I feel bad for your kids and their use of Gemini, knowing that your credit card is already saved now. I guess I feel
I,
bad for you, not your kids.
yeah, it's gonna be bad for my credit card, I'm
I
sure.
I do have to say though, Gabe, buying new shirts, new shoes over the past few weeks, I hate shopping. I do not enjoy it, and you better believe the first place I went, not only to find products but to find feedback and reviews, was AI. So
Same.
if I could eliminate the middleman, which I feel like is just, if I could eliminate me in this scenario and just have AI take what it knows about me and make those purchasing decisions, I'll set a budget. But I think, Gabe, I'm not set on 12 months, but let's check in maybe 6 months and see where we're at.
I like it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Buffering. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more insights and updates, be sure to connect with Gabe and I on LinkedIn.